We the people! We the people! We the people! We the people!
United States of America.
The revolution was effected before the war commenced. The revolution was in the minds and hearts of the people. This radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and affections of the people was the real American Revolution. I wanted to share that because I think that's why we're all here. We're trying to effect a radical change in the thinking of the American people so that we don't have to fight a war where people die.
There you go.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to start over and talk about the vaccines again. Because I'm a mom with 3 kids, I have become very, very concerned about these vaccines. Some information has come out in the mainstream media about the potential risks of vaccines. A lot of information is being suppressed. And as many people in this room are probably aware, the FDA and the CDC and all the other alphabet soups in Washington are not looking out for you. They're looking out for corporate interests. I urge everybody to get a copy of this. It's not the most professionally done DVD in the history of the world, but it's called Shoot 'em Up, The Truth About Vaccines. And if nothing else, it'll make you think and do some research before you decide whether or not you want to take a vaccine and whether or not you want to get your children vaccinated. These pieces of paper are 10 things that you should know about vaccines, but you probably don't, and people in government don't want you to know. But this information is critical. Please take a copy of it, make copies of it, and pass it out to people you care about. This new swine flu vaccine that they're pushing right now and that they hope to be able to make mandatory perhaps in the fall for all of us could be an extremely dangerous thing. Nobody really knows. It has not been adequately tested. It hasn't been tested at all yet, as far as I know. There was a similar flu in 1976. They went ahead with an untested vaccine, and many, many people got very, very sick. Some people were paralyzed, and they had to stop with the vaccinations because so many people were harmed. I pray that this is not going to happen this time. But in order to make sure that no drug manufacturer gets in trouble and nobody in the government gets in trouble, Kathleen Sebelius, the Secretary of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C., on July 18th, granted legal immunity to all government officials and all manufacturers of the vaccines. So if anything goes wrong, too bad. You're not going to have any recourse. And if they thought this vaccine was the greatest thing since sliced bread, they would not be granting legal immunity to the drug manufacturers before it's even put out into the public domain. So please, do some research on vaccines. There's a wonderful resource called the National Vaccine Information Center. Go there and do some research before you make your final decision. We were also going to talk about genetically modified foods, and I have a little bit of information about that too. Genetically modified foods, they estimate that 75% now of all processed foods in the United States are genetically modified. Now, there are lots of different ways that they can genetically modify it, but just let me give you 2 instances. Monsanto has developed something called terminator seeds, where the farmer plants the seed, and then, especially in third world countries, they used to save the seeds for next year's crop. They can't do that now because Monsanto has made it so that the seeds can only be used one time and then they are sterile. They're known as terminator seeds. This forces farmers in third world countries to have to keep buying the seeds from Monsanto. There's another kind of seed they've developed which is called a traitor seed. And this is a similar kind of thing. They sell the traitor seeds to the farmers, but then the traitor seeds will not germinate until they are sprayed with a pesticide that is produced by, can anybody guess? Gee, do you think? So that's genetically modified foods. Nobody has any idea what the long-term health effects of genetically modified foods are going to be. So I have something here for you all, too, all about genetically modified foods, what they are, and some of the steps that you can take to protect yourselves and your families from the possible bad effects of eating GMO foods over a lifetime.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
Sue, how long has genetically modified foods been being sold on the shelves in America?
I think it's really picked up in the last 5 to 10 years, but they've been experimenting with it for decades.
Decades. Could the fact that I'm 44 years old, in school there were kids that had allergy, hay fever allergies and such, and I have children right now that are bringing notes home for peanut allergies, and
Yep.
I don't think I've ever heard of, at least in my day, in school, of one kid having a
Yep.
peanut allergy.
Right.
Is that a result of genetically modified foods, or is that, what? I find that curious.
I don't know that anybody has the final answer to that, but it probably has to do with the fact that we are destroying children's natural immunity by giving them way too many vaccines, way too early, all at once. And as I said earlier, we're under assault in so many different ways. We've got these vaccines, we've got genetically modified foods, we've got chemtrails. It's going to make people sick. And that's not what God intended for us. He intended for us to be healthy. But it's not profitable to the pharmaceutical companies if you're healthy. Here's something else that I would recommend everybody get. You can probably rent it at your local library. You can buy it at a bookstore. It's called The World According to Monsanto. And it's very well done. It's very professionally done. And there's a lot of good information in it about Monsanto, about traitor seeds, terminator seeds, genetically modified foods in general. This book I recommend to everybody. This is called Seeds of Destruction, The Hidden Agenda of Genetic Manipulation. This is something that everybody needs to be aware of. We have to be able to protect ourselves, protect our children, protect our families from all these things that we're being exposed to if we're going to stay healthy and stay free. This last book, it was written by a couple who had 5 children, and I believe all 5 of them were damaged by the vaccines their children were given when they were very young. It's called The Slow Poisoning of America. And I hate to sound like a crazy person, but I really have come to believe with all the research I've done that this is what is happening. We are all being slowly poisoned to death. Our water supply is contaminated. Fluoride is a neurotoxin. It's a byproduct of the production of fertilizer, and we're putting it in our water supply. Are we nuts? So between the water, the contaminated food with GMOs, nobody knows what the effect of that is going to be long term, the vaccines, the chemtrails, we are under assault. And we, the people, have got to educate ourselves and figure out what we need to do to protect ourselves and our families, and then share that information with others. Because